We're going to go on to our next feature now, and now before we start, I'm just going to give you a quick trigger warning. Our next feature may be upsetting or triggering to some, so please look after yourself. Obviously, you have full permission to turn this off if it feels too much for you today. Please just take note of that. Previously on Chaos TV, we've heard from Clear, a Cornish-based charity dedicated to the highest levels of care and support for people of all ages impacted by abuse and other emotional trauma. To continue the conversation about the fantastic work they do, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr Lexi Painter to the show. Hello.
Hello. Lovely to meet you both.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. It's great to have you on.
It's great to be on. Thank you.
So, first of all, could you remind us about Clear and obviously the great work they do all across Cornwall?
Of course. So Clear is an emotional trauma charity. That means that it works with people who have experienced quite difficult times in their lives, and we offer counselling. I'm here to talk mainly about the adults side of the service today, but we also work in schools, we work with children, and we work with professionals. Doing all sorts of amazing work, like you say. But yes, here to talk mainly about the adult service today.
Brilliant. And Lexi, can you tell us a little bit about what your role is and what you do, please?
Yeah, so my role in terms of Clear is the adult clinical lead. So like I said, we have an adult service and a child service. So above 18 is considered an adult. So we work with any adults that have experienced difficult things in their life. So that could be sexual abuse, rape, kind of really difficult experiences that would kind of mean that they're experiencing trauma. And I've lost what I was saying. Sorry, it's a bit nerve-wracking this.
No, you're fine. We'll feel the exact same way. If we have a problem here, if this goes away from in front of us, it's just like, so no panic.
So we have counsellors that obviously provide counselling for adults. So I look after them. I also do safeguarding, which is if there's any risk to clients, to people themselves or other people, then I can help kind of direct people to the right support, to counsellors to get the right support for the people that they're working with. I respond to referrals. I kind of review the running of the service. Try to make sure that we're providing the best standards of support within our kind of charitable limits, really. So all sorts. And then also on top of that, I'm a counselling psychologist. So what that actually means is I've done quite a lot of training. So I trained as a counsellor, I did a psychology degree, and then I did my counselling psychology doctorate. So the way that works is that you use your counselling knowledge and your psychological knowledge to bring together a way of working that is really person-centred based and takes that each person into account really and their journey. So I'm very interested in what goes on for people, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and helping empower them to live the best lives that they can. So it's slightly different to a clinical psychologist, but I won't go into the massive details around that. But it's specialising in the human relationship, really, in terms of promoting healing and growth.
It's really lovely to hear as I'm only a layman, obviously, but it's lovely to hear how you treat each individual person as each individual. It's not like putting person in a pile of this type of person or this type of problem or whatever. Each individual person is catered to or treated individually, which I feel like there needs to be more
as
of
it
that.
should, yeah.
Exactly. Now, obviously, you've talked about your role and the work you do. We're more focusing on adults at the moment. What Clear services in general are there available for adults?
So for adults at the moment, what we offer mainly is person-centred counselling. I always put a bit of disclaimer around this. So what is person-centred counselling? It's exactly kind of as we were talking about, it's taking each person as they are. So you may have diagnosis, you may have no diagnosis, but it's whatever is going on for you that you're struggling with that we can try and help work with. So and that's how our person-centred counsellors work, but they are also trained in other kind of trauma-informed ways of working. So there's no pressure to talk about anything that you don't want to talk about. Sometimes it's helpful to just have a conversation about the effects of what's happened on your life rather than going into any details. And then other people, they feel like they need to tell their story. So that's why person-centered counselling can be really beneficial, because it's tailored to that each person. And people may have been through similar things, but people can react differently, and I think it's figuring that out, helping you figure yourself out, with the help of obviously someone who's trained in that way. So that's the person-centered counselling. But also we offer eye movement desensitization reprocessing, or EMDR therapy, and that's kind of, well, a relatively new therapy, but it's been around for about 25 years, with regards to eye movements and helping you process trauma or difficult things that have happened in your life. But I'll say a bit more about that later, but that's the main things that we offer for adults at the moment. We do have a men's group, a men's therapeutic group, and we are looking at introducing a supportive women's group as well. And we're also looking at things that we can help people with whilst they wait for counselling. So potential group work around coping skills, emotional ways of coping with emotions, and tolerating sometimes the distress that we feel inside. So there's lots of exciting things going on with Clear, and we're always looking to improve the service that we're able to provide to everyone.
Absolutely. It sounds like you said, so much going on, which is brilliant. We talk about the importance of free counselling for adults. Can I ask you about the funding and what is involved in that to be able to provide this?
Yeah, absolutely. Part of why I work for a charity is I really see the importance of providing counselling to anyone, no matter what their economic background is. It's slightly challenging in a charity to keep the funding going. So if anyone's out there that wants to help out Clear, please get in touch. But currently we're funded by the Ministry of Justice, and they fund adult victims of sexual abuse, and that could be any time in their lives. And part of that is that we're also funded by the OPCC, and that's to do with victims of traumatic crime. Obviously, we have links with Chaos, building better opportunities, so the Who Dares Works project and Positive People projects. So that's obviously, I'm sure your listeners might know that that's in terms of helping people get back into work, but sometimes trauma and mental health can be a block around that. So that's where Clear can come in to provide some support through that project work, for free for people. We've also got kind of ways of kind of funding pots around direct purchases. So sometimes people have access to other charitable funds that can then pay for their therapy as well. And we're working on talking with the NHS at the moment around seeing if it's at all possible to have some money around supporting people that have come through the NHS and maybe feel a little bit too, I'm not sure about this word complex, but have tried to access Outlook Southwest and feel like their needs haven't quite been met, but also they're not quite meeting some thresholds for community mental health teams, which can be really, really confusing. So there's some discussions going on around potential more funding around that as well.
Yeah, it sounds like you're all being very proactive about it, which I think when it comes to funding, I think that's the big key to it. You have to be so proactive, and you have to be constantly knocking on doors, so to speak, and constantly explaining yourself to try and almost be the loudest voice. But it's such a good thing to be proactive about.
Absolutely. I think it's really collaborative as well. I don't think it's ever just one service, because if a person's struggling, you'll go to many different services, and it's important that we're all giving consistent messages and all helping each other out, really. I think as professionals, we need to model that, for everyone else, because it can be a confusing world out there, trying to get some support. So if we can work together, then hopefully that supports the work for people that are finding things a bit difficult.
It's funny, no matter whatever we talk about on the show, it always comes back to working together and being more open to working together. Like you said, you've got positive people, chaos, and yourselves clear. And I can obviously imagine a whole lot more all working together. And it's not just that, it's like working together without even knowing you're working together sometimes. So chaos may be working with another group that somehow helps us to help you, and then vice versa.
Yeah.
And you may not even know, but it's just making those bridges helps everyone in the long run in some way, shape, or form. Even you may not even know it, which is so lovely to know that it's happening. Going back to trauma, which can obviously be quite a complex thing, and very much is a complex thing. How do you define it?
I think this is a good question, isn't it? In my preparation for this question, I had a look on the Mind website, which is a wonderful charity as well in terms of information around mental health. And they define trauma as going through a very stressful, frightening, or distressing event. And when we talk about emotional or psychological trauma, it might mean situations or events that we find difficult, or that word traumatic might produce those kind of feelings of anxiety and panic and distress. But it's also how we're affected by our experiences. And traumatic events can happen at any age and can cause long-lasting harm if not addressed. I mean, I don't want to scare anyone. I think there's a lot of resilience out there. Lots of people have difficult things that happen to them, and they're able to kind of grow from it in terms of what we call post-traumatic growth. But equally, sometimes people might find that they're struggling as well. So the effects of trauma might kind of pass quickly, or might continue to cause distress kind of quite a long time afterwards as well. There's a wonderful man, Dr. Gabor Mate, and he is currently doing loads of amazing work around trauma. And I really like his definition, which I'll share, which is trauma isn't just what happened to us, but the meaning we make about ourselves because of what happened to us. And I really like that quote, because it kind of sums up. So one thing can happen to one person, but they might react in a different way. And I think it's because of this reason. So you never know it goes back to, you never really know what someone's gone through, and the sense that they're making it about themselves or kind of about the world that they're living in. And I think it comes back to compassion and understanding that everyone's got something that's happened to them or might be troubling them. And that is what it means to them, which is the important thing. And just finally, I've got another quote. There's another amazing trauma writer called Bessel van der Kolk, and he defines trauma as an inescapably stressful event that overwhelms people's existing coping mechanisms. And I like that one because it encompasses that sometimes we're in traumatic, we're in places that we feel like we can't escape from, and that's sometimes where we can end up feeling traumatized. So it's massively broad, but I hope that some of these quotes and kind of insights have helped to explain what trauma might be. And it can have roots in any time of anyone's life. So you can be going along just fine, and then something can happen, or you could have had kind of many different events throughout childhood which might accumulate.
No, I know what you mean. I've got a few friends, and I've talked about this before. I'm very lucky to have a friendship group that can be very open and honest with each other, and we talk about things. And it's quite amazing to hear so many stories from so many people that you would very easily be able to class as traumatic, and it still affects them to this day. And I think that's a big part of what trauma is to a lot of people. Is something that happened to them that was this horrible thing that happened to them, whatever that may be. Because something horrible to one person may not be horrible to the next, but it still affects them later on. And some people have got help. And it's been able to help them get past this or move on, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you made some brilliant points, and listening to those quotes as well. It's like you said, it is such a broad term, but everybody deals with it differently. So I think we have a clip now which will explain a little bit more about trauma.
Today's session is about trauma. The latest in brain science will help you in your work. I'll start with a tour of the parts of the human brain. The reptilian brain maintains basic bodily functions. The limbic system is also instinctive. It deals with fear and pleasure, For example, you pat a dog, it senses pleasure, and without thinking, wags its tail. The neocortex is the site of logic, imagination, planning, and control. It's more sophisticated, but because it's conscious, it's slower than the older parts of the brain. The amygdala is a key part of the limbic system. It has one job: to sense danger and set off the alarm. When it's a matter of survival, the primitive parts of the brain override the conscious part. There are 3 possible survival responses: fight, flight, or the one that people don't think of, freeze. When the alarm goes off, blood and oxygen are diverted to muscles, adrenaline floods the body, and all systems that are not crucial to survival are switched off. Normally, the job of the hippocampus is to file memories so you can retrieve them later, but in times of danger, it stops filing memories, which makes it harder to gather evidence later on. Instead, the hippocampus switches to pumping cortisol. What's useful about cortisol is it stops us feeling pain, so we can focus on survival. Can anyone give me an example?
A farming accident where a man carried his own arm for a mile without feeling any pain?
Yes, excellent example. It is an evolutionary safety mechanism which is fast and instinctive. In essence, it's our body's very clever way of protecting us. To recap, an example of the 3 parts of the brain working together. You're standing at a bar. Your reptilian brain is keeping your heart beating. You're enjoying the pleasure of a nice pint with your limbic system. You're using your neocortex to work out if there's time for another before the last train. What could happen to make the amygdala kick in? What if this happened? The way you'd respond would depend not on your logical brain, but on your instinctive brain. Being glassed in a bar would be a traumatic experience. Who can give me another example of an event that can cause trauma?
War?
Rape?
A car crash?
Good, yes. Trauma occurs when a person is overwhelmed by something beyond their control. The survival brain takes over the rational brain. It can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, with symptoms that last at least a month. Vicarious or secondary trauma is something you may experience if you deal with incidents such as rape or sudden death, or think of Lockerbie, Dunblane. You're not superheroes. Having a brain makes you all vulnerable to secondary trauma. It's important to understand that when trauma occurs again and again, it can become complex PTSD, such as in domestic abuse or child sexual abuse. The alarm system in the brain becomes jammed. Memories are stuck in the limbic system, so a trigger can set off the alarm. The trigger could be anything: a colour, a smell, a sound, a sensation. Now, the indicators of trauma. What should you be looking out for?
Depression. Crying a lot?
Yes, that's one response. And at the other end of the spectrum, total numbness.
Nightmares? Flashbacks?
Stress.
Good, yes. And they may feel sick. Also, shame, feelings of guilt, inability to enjoy sex, social isolation, triggers. People often feel overwhelmed by the symptoms of trauma. This can lead to using alcohol or other drugs to block out memories, or self-harm, or dissociation when a person's mind detaches from reality. Indicators can be specific to the type of trauma. Say, dental problems, when someone who was orally abused avoids going to the dentist. A victim of abuse might bond strongly to her abuser. This is known as traumatic bonding, or Stockholm syndrome. And jumbled up memory, when a person's normal recording of memories doesn't work. Can you recall any times you've seen that symptom?
What time? I don't know.
A traumatised person may not seem like her usual self, or may be hypervigilant, on edge, or being startled by everyday things. Everyone is different. You never know what impact trauma will have. Symptoms can change from day to day.
Absolutely fantastic video there as far as information goes. What would you have to say about that one so far?
I think, sorry, was that for me?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm not sure whether anyone could see that video. I'm sorry if it was more of the sounds which were a bit hard to kind of conceptualize if you can't see the images. But I was in two minds about sharing that, but obviously we put that trigger warning out, which I think is really, really important. But there's things that are really important to kind of help people figure out what their trauma might look like, and sometimes those examples might not fit, or they might fit. So I think it's knowing that everyone's different. But I was hoping that would be a kind of a good summary of such a massive topic, so you can think about maybe even connecting with other people in your life who might have experienced trauma, and understanding maybe a bit more of what they've been through.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Everyone, don't worry, everyone did actually get to see and hear that perfectly. Yeah, it was a very, very interesting video. And there's little bits of it that I'm looking at and going, I've heard about this sort of thing before, and this and that. It's not, I find it all very interesting. As much as I hate saying that, because it's always such about something that obviously comes from something bad, but it is something that's always been very interesting. And human brain is such a marvelous and wonderful thing, and yet we know so little about it still. And trying to work it out from your point of view, I don't even want to imagine what that must be like for you. It must be so difficult. Could we talk about now a bit more about person-centered therapy? What is that?
Yeah, of course. So I said a little bit, didn't I, about what person-centered therapy was earlier, but there's a really good association if you're looking for a counsellor, if you want to check that they're legitimate, that they're going to provide the best support for you. It's called the British Association of Counsellors and Psychotherapists. Okay. So it's a really good one to have a look at if you're looking at counselling, either training yourself to be a counsellor or to look at kind of finding a counsellor privately. But they suggest that a person-centered, kind of the main bits of person-centered therapy is linked to a man called Carl Rogers, and he came up with Rogerian or humanistic counselling. So not to get too jargony about it, but what that means is taking the human, and really understanding that person for who they are and what's going on. And part of that is around unconditional positive regard. So that means accepting and valuing that person for who they are. And they might not have had that in their life. They might not have been accepted, exactly how they are. They might have had conditions on, you're only worthy if you do this. And we know that parents do the best they can, but sometimes those conditions can get unconsciously kind of programmed in. Also, they offer congruence, which is really being authentic, honest, transparent. And we know with trauma that being really honest, being really clear about, ironically, being really clear about what's going on for people and what they can expect from you as a counsellor is really, really important as well. And also empathy. So empathic understanding. So everyone will have heard that empathy, but it's really putting yourself, so counsellors are trained to really put themselves in your shoes and really come alongside you. So sometimes they can't take away what's happened, but they can help you feel less alone with the effects of maybe what's happened to you. So put it simply, person-centered counselling is helping you at your own pace, kind of make sense of what's going on, understand yourself a bit better, and help. I always think help those kind of qualities in you. So to not judge yourself and to be honest and transparent, maybe with yourself, which is sometimes really difficult to do. But then that kind of goes out to others, so then you're honest and transparent with other people, which is sometimes a bit more simple. And then empathy, to have empathy for yourself and compassion for what you've been through. And I know it's a bit cheesy, but I like to say it's kind of being your own friend. And sometimes you have to learn to be your own friend. We're all very critical, can be very critical on ourselves. So it's that kind of, sometimes we need that teaching and that modelling to kind of get a bit of an inner therapist. So we've got a critical voice and an I'm okay voice, but sometimes you need that kind of counsellor in the middle to go, it's understandable that you would feel angry because this has happened to you. Emotions are okay. They would say they're called emotions because it's energy in motion. So emotions are there to be felt. And sometimes that can feel quite scary for people, but actually that emotion needs to be kind of validated. It's okay to feel it, and it needs to be felt. So you've got to think about yourself as a bit of a tube, and all the emotions are in that tube. But if there's kind of a stopper on either end, they get stuck. And actually, we're made for emotions to flow through us.
Oh, I really like the way you worded that. It's a lovely outlook on it, and it's like you said, it's about doing it at your own pace. Obviously, alongside the person-centered therapy, can we talk a little bit about EMDR therapy as well? I know that's becoming more accessible now. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so we've got Prince Harry, who's recently come out and said that he's had some EMDR. So I think it's gaining a bit of traction. But sometimes I find it's been this kind of mystery therapy, and I'm all about dispelling the myth around what EMDR is. So I'll break it down. So first, the E stands for, or the EM stands for eye movements. And what that means is your eyes move from side to side. So your head stays still and your eyes move from side to side. And what that does, if we go back to the trauma in the brain video, is it keeps this neocortex, specifically prefrontal cortex bit of our brain online. So we're usually, when we're traumatized, this bottom bit of our brain takes over and this bit goes offline. So by doing the eye movements or any what we call bilateral stimulation, so that means right or left hand sides. So anything that stimulates the right hand and left hand side. So tapping the knees, tapping the arms, using the eye movement, sometimes auditory things in either side of the ear, can really help keep this part of your brain online when you're feeling traumatized. So that's the eye movements. The D is the desensitization. So what that means is it helps to think about, helps clients to think about difficult things that have happened to them without feeling overwhelmed. So it's a way of helping people tolerate kind of their distress. And that's linked obviously with this, keeping this part of the brain online. So doing that task that stimulates the right hand, left hand side of the brain keeps you kind of involved with that memory in a way that you can kind of distance yourself in some way. And like you said earlier, there's so much that we don't know about the brain, but this is what we do know so far. So that's eye movements, desensitization, and then the reprocessing is using kind of the attention. So doing lots of things with your brain at the same time helps desensitize. So it helps. Oh, sorry, I've done desensitize. It helps to reprocess. So kind of a fragmented or a broken down memory can actually start to get understood a bit more. Your brain can make sense of it. It stores it differently in the memory. All quite technical, but there's some kind of what we call reprocessing of that memory. So you can start to remember it in a different way or put some distance between. Very often with trauma, it feels like it's happening again. And with the reprocessing and how it's stored in the memory can help you say, that was then and this is now.
That's quite incredible. We've got a little bit of short film now to explain a little bit more, but it's quite amazing just how doing these simple things can really help you like get on. You know, I'm amazed more and more every day. It's always something simple. Not always, but a lot of the time it is, and it's quite amazing the large effect it has. Let's have a quick look at this short film.
EMDR therapy was originally developed in the United States of America. Its purpose is to treat post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD. It's been used in a variety of settings and countries over the past 25 years to not only successfully treat PTSD, but to also address a range of other mental health issues including depression, anxiety, panic attacks, grief, performance anxiety, nightmares, phobias, and addictions. EMDR therapy first began in 1987 when psychologist Dr. Francine Shapiro made the observation that eye movements can reduce the intensity of disturbing thoughts under certain conditions. Dr. Shapiro studied this effect scientifically and in 1989 reported success using EMDR to treat PTSD. Since this initial discovery, over 30 scientifically rigorous studies have proven that EMDR therapy is one of the most effective treatments for trauma. EMDR therapy is now endorsed by many reputable bodies including the World Health Organization. A typical EMDR therapy session lasts between 60 to 90 minutes. The type of problem, life circumstances, and the amount of previous trauma will determine how many treatment sessions you might need. During EMDR therapy, your therapist will work with you to identify a specific problem or memory as a focus for the treatment session. As you recall this disturbing issue or event, and what you think and feel as you remember it, your therapist will invite you to follow a side-to-side movement with your eyes. These eye movements are used until the memory you have becomes distant and less distressing, so new positive thoughts about yourself can emerge and be matched to the original issue or memory. EMDR therapy does not involve homework, is often quicker than other trauma treatments, and its benefits continue to be experienced and grow long after treatment is finished. For more information on EMDR therapy and to find an EMDR therapist near you, please visit www.emdraa.org.
And there we go, another brilliant video and graphics there for more information. So Lexi, whilst we've got you here, I think we've got a little bit of time now for you. You've agreed to give us a short little grounding exercise. If I can hand over to you now.
Can I just say quickly about that video, just to say that the EMDRAA is the Australian website, just to let you know. There is an English website. I just wanted to put a disclaimer there just in case everyone's visiting that website hoping it to be UK. But if you put EMDR into Google, EMDR UK, it should come up with the UK version of that website.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, we're glad you caught us on that.
And also, just really quickly, EMDR is an amazing therapy, and obviously I've really sold it there, but it's not to discount that actually person-centered therapy is also massively helpful for people. And I think sometimes EMDR is seen as this kind of, it'll just fix you, and actually it's still quite a difficult therapy. There's still some quite difficult processes to go through, but it's definitely there as an option. If you've tried other therapies, it's helpful to know the different therapies that are available, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to put those two disclaimers out there as well.
Thank you very much for that. So, I believe we're going to get a grounding exercise with you now.
Yes. So the thing is just to set this up a bit, the thing is with trauma is that we lose contact with the moment, the now. So we go back to wherever we were that was kind of really distressing. So this term grounding can be really, really helpful. So what that means is anything that's going to bring you back to the moment. So that could be a nice smell, that could be listening to a nice song, it could be having a cup of tea and feeling the warmth of it, anything that really uses your senses and feels quite comforting and can bring you back to the moment. So the kind of very short meditation or kind of exercise I'm going to just talk through, you're more than welcome to try or not as you would like. But if you find a comfortable position, sitting, standing, you can close your eyes, or you can just look down at the floor, or you can keep watching. It's absolutely fine. It doesn't matter. And what we're going to do is just use a bit of your imagination to see if it can help you ground in the moment. So firstly, if you can take a few deep breaths, that's always a good thing in terms of getting back into your body, realizing that we are breathing, it carries on, and we are able to be a bit more grounded, a bit more in the moment, realizing that we're right here, right now. And what I want you to do is imagine that you have roots, and these roots grow very deeply into the earth. So connect your roots deep down into the center of the earth. So imagine that they're just going out through your feet into the earth. And I want you to imagine that you're becoming a tree. Just feel how deep your roots grow. And they might connect with other people's roots along the way. So we're all connected underneath. And just remember to keep breathing. And if your brain's going off in other directions, that's absolutely fine. Just bring your attention back to my voice. Breathing in slowly through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you notice your breathing, you might feel your tummy filling up with air. And as you breathe out, you might feel your tummy getting flatter, pushing out all the air. And just go back to your roots. So your roots running deep. And just pay attention to your body, which can be the trunk of the tree. Does it feel strong and solid? Just feel like your leaves and your branches are waving in the wind. And that's kind of what life's like sometimes. Sometimes there's a storm going on outside, but you've still got your roots keeping your tree into the earth. And sometimes the sun might be out and you might be feeling the sunshine. And I think sometimes it's really helpful to take a minute out just to connect with wider nature and just really connecting with that sense of being rooted, being grounded in the earth and being something that's come from the earth. Sometimes we move away from nature, and it's helpful to know that there's really useful things in nature that can help ground us. Just know that whatever weather is going on, there's always a way for you to kind of feel grounded and feel connected to the earth and to other people. And that's the most important thing in terms of trauma, is that connection to ourselves and connection to other people. So all of us being trees together. And when you're ready, just bring your attention back to your breathing. Take a few more deep breaths. And just allow yourself to notice what's going on in the room around you. Open your eyes and you're able to continue with your day.
Well, that was actually lovely. I'm not going to lie. I'm in a comfy chair. I was nearly gone. But I see what you mean. You do just, your brain sort of calms down a little bit. At least that's what I sort of felt. I've been having a day where I've been, Ross will tell you, I've sort of been a little bit hyper here and then. I've not been able to hold on to one sort of sentence in my head before the next comes along. I get days like that. That was really quite nice just to
I really enjoyed
relax
that
as well. Yeah.
Something like that. And like we said, all it takes is a couple minutes, maybe every day, just to, do that. It's so simple to do. You doesn't require anything other than just a moment for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
That's lovely.
Thank you so much.
It doesn't have to take very long, It can only be. You can just take a few minutes out and just to breathe, or if you can't imagine things, like watch something. Just taking that time out for yourself is really, really important when life's so busy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for showing us that, and obviously thank you for coming on the show to talk to us today. It's been really lovely to have you on. It'd be lovely to have you back again sometime in the future. Yeah,
absolutely. I'd love to come back. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you very much. So if you would like more information about Clear and to access their support or self-refer, please visit their website, clearsupport.net, or call 01872 261 147. That's 01872 2611 147. And obviously that was Dr Lexi Painter. What a fantastic person.
Absolutely.
Clear will be back with us here on Chaos TV next month.